I'm not just a designer. You can find a designer out there much cheaper than I am. I offer people a combination of messaging and design, which is a whole, next level to it. You have to become a performer of your slides and not a presenter. That's my goal when I work with people, is to get people so excited that they just can't help but want to jump in and join and invest and be a part of your idea. I really needed to stop selling and start listening. That was my big revelation. The first step is to listen.
So those were just a few highlights from my conversation with Versaviya Despars. In the full episode, we're going to dig into how she went from printing flyers and going door to door, not even knowing what she was selling, to finding her sweet spot. We'll talk about why broad experimentation has to come before niching, the critical difference between marketing yourself and actually selling your services, and why saying no might be the most powerful tool in your solo business. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil. Let's dive in. Welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil. My next guest got rejected by her dream company, felt weirdly free, hired herself, and now turns complicated startup stories into, ooh, I get it, pitch decks and scripts. Versaviya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and have this chat with you.
I am too. So I want to start by taking you back to the spring of 2023. You graduated a rock star in school, you won a bunch of awards, then you faced a brutal 7-month job search, right? So walk me through what that does to your confidence when the world suddenly doesn't validate, I guess, what school just told you about yourself.
Yeah. So my journey was a little bit not A to B. So I actually went into the workplace. And then when I moved to a different state, I decided to go back to school instead of get a job at an agency. So after finishing that school, like you said, I was smothered in awards. I was just like riding high. I thought I'd have like 3 offers by the time I graduated, but that definitely was not the case. And it was sort of a rude awakening of like, wow, in this market, it's extremely difficult to find a job as a creative. And it made it even more difficult by I moved again to a different state, didn't know anyone, and it was right before the holidays. So it was just a compounding effect of difficulty. And if we're talking, how does it feel? Feels horrible to get that door slammed in your face over and over. And it was very demoralizing to my own concept of my worth. You think that you are so valued and you think you can solve all these problems, but to be rejected over and over again, it's rough on anyone. I don't care how confident you are. That was a really big low point for me of just thinking, am I even worth to be hired? Or you question a lot about yourself. So it was really, really difficult, and it kind of brought me to my knees in a way of like, wow, I can't do this anymore. This is, I feel like I'm banging my head against a wall and I'm still at square one. There's that was 7 months of that same cycle over and over of like, oh, there's an offer and it's gone. And it just over and over until it led up to that fateful moment, Christmas of 2023, when I actually got an interview with my dream company. And I was really excited about it. I was like, oh my goodness, here it is. The stars are aligning. It's happening. And I was strung along by them for a couple of months until they ghosted me. And that point was the hardest, lowest point that I could have been in, because I, at this point, had told my husband, like, I can take care of us. Like, I got this while he was in training and to be a pilot, so he couldn't work. And I felt like I was letting him down. I had these panic attacks in the middle of the night thinking, how the heck are we going to get any money for rent next month? And I knew what was coming. Like when you're ghosted for 2 weeks, they're not going to give you the job. So what I realized, and actually this is something I realized recently, is I really struggle being in limbo. And when I actually got the rejection letter, I felt so relieved and so free that I was like, well, at least I know where I'm going now. And I had such clarity of moving forward. And I just, like you said, decided to hire myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You're right though, because that can happen. That honestly, that validation that we seek externally, we're sort of primed for that, right? In whether it's in school or in college or winning awards, especially in the corporate world, the titles that you get, and you sort of associate your self-worth to that, right? So
Hmm.
it's really crushing. And I can tell you, I mean, I started Boost Solo after facing ageism and sending out hundreds of
Yeah.
resumes and getting, not even responses. Forget being strung
Hmm.
along for an interview. That would have been nice, but
Right.
yeah, but I totally hear you. But I mean, it's like, and that's one of the things I love about this journey too, is right that
Hmm.
you start detaching your self-worth to a lot of those external things, right? Because
Hmm.
now you're sort of, and we'll touch on some of those things, but I want to sort of double click on that panic to freedom, right? You just said a minute
Hmm.
ago you were sort of waking up with panic attacks in the middle of the night. So tell me, why was it so instant? Was it a conscious decision, or do you feel like it was just exhaustion?
It was the exhaustion of being pulled in two different directions because I felt, um, I mean, already I think I was brewing the idea of like, what if I just hired myself? What if I did my own thing? But there's this opportunity to get hired somewhere, and I can't move on mentally, physically. I can't move on until I get an answer about it. And that was the most difficult part for me, is being in that limbo stage and wondering like, is it going to happen? And um, I think a lot of that, if I had gone through that same process and situation now, I think I could have handled it better because what I realized recently is that a lot of that is in your head. A lot of that like panic and feeling of not being safe is in your own head of like, okay, chill out, Versavia. There's no lion trying to attack you right now. You're fine. A lot of that stress is made up in our own heads and we kind of encircle, and that's what anxiety is. It's just like a straw demon made of nothing that we just scare ourselves into believing. So it's interesting to think about how I would deal with that situation now with the tools that I've learned over the last couple of years. And being a business owner definitely gives you a lot of tools and resources to deal with things like that.
Yeah, I love that description of the straw monster that is is can when you put it that way, you could also it feels a lot easier to blow it away, right? It's like a big
Right.
wind blows and you can send it off. But you're right, and we do sort of build those tools on this journey, right? Because
Hmm.
and because you deal with rejection very differently now. Because
Hmm.
I mean, initially it's like you feel like you're being rejected, right?
Yeah.
Versus when you're working for a corporation, you got something to hide behind. So
Hmm.
now to continue your story, you hired yourself, and
Yeah.
then you told me you printed flyers, went
Yeah.
door to door, and that did not work out well. Now you say you didn't even know what you were offering or who needed it, right? So tell me,
Right.
what was the biggest lesson you learned from that failed experiment, I guess, that helps you today when you're talking to
Hmm.
startups?
The biggest thing is to figure out what you're selling. And I I feel bad for the people that I tried to talk to in that moment because, if I don't know what I'm selling, heck if they know. So I realized in that moment pretty early on is like, okay, this obviously isn't working. Let me figure out what is. And I maybe didn't know exactly what to do, but I did know it wasn't working. And that's the first step, right? You have to try something. So I'm an introvert. I'm a forced extrovert just by necessity. I've
Yeah.
learned to be extroverted just because of networking and being put in situations where I had to be. But by nature, I am very much more introverted. My happy place is just like alone with my cats or my husband. Like that's safe, right? And so to be put in a position where I had to go door to door to businesses, I can't tell you how terrifying that was. But it was good because it kind of got me out of my comfort zone and made me try. Like it didn't work, but that's not the point. The point is to go out and try because if you're not trying, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Yeah.
And so that was a big lesson for me as well, is figuring out how to step out of my comfort zone, because that's a skill in and of itself. So yeah, obviously the flyers didn't work because I didn't know what I was selling. I didn't know who I was selling it to. It was very vague. I was like, illustration, video, graphic design, I can do it all. And so that just confused them. So the first thing I needed to figure out was one specific offer that I could provide to people.
Yeah.
And that's a lot easier said than done. I don't know how, you kind of came to your conclusion of what your offer is in your journey, but it was one of the toughest things for me to figure out.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I always tell people when they're starting out, it's important to niche and to have a focus, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Right.
So as long as you're applying your skills, now what you shouldn't do is say, okay, I'm going to go start designing jeans if that's not something you've ever done, or I mean,
Hmm.
so it's like take the skills that you have and try and apply them, and it can be to a broad basket of things. But
Hmm.
like you said, but then you have to learn from the signals you get from the market, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
important. A lot of people just sort of put their blinders on and be like, no, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm brilliant at, and
right.
you're dumb if you don't buy it from me. And
Hmm.
that doesn't really work out well. So
Yeah, I think that is very much true. And I learned a lot from people like Chris Do and all the other, um, you know, content creators out there that create really solid advice for people like me in that situation. That's part of the reason why I was able to pull myself out of that rock bottom moment. So I'm very grateful to them. Um, the one thing that I would say as a caveat to all that advice is that be careful of what advice you listen to at what stage, because
yeah.
some of the advice that I was picking up early on, it was too soon for me. So you kind of brought up the point where, you should niche down, but first, before you niche, you have to figure out what you want to do, and the best way to do that is to try a lot of things.
Yeah.
So yes to niching, but first start by experimenting. You have to try. So in the early stages, I was saying yes to every project. I was saying yes to every meeting. I was saying yes to coffees with random people, whatever. But the whole purpose of that is to eventually have the ability to say no.
Yeah.
And no is so powerful in business, because if you're saying no to something, that means you're saying yes to something else. So you can get more picky as you get further along into understanding what it is that you're offering. But for sure, I think that you hit that nail on the head. You have to first experiment and try before you like commit to one specific lane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's excellent advice for anybody listening or wanting to start their journey. Don't be, and you're right. A lot of people, and I've spoken to a lot of people who were told too early on to niche down, which I always give, exactly like that. I always tell people the opposite. It's like you've got to try a bunch of things, right? And then
Yeah.
start, but always learn. That's important. Pick up the
Hmm.
signals and see what's working. So
Hmm.
now you said, so tell me about the first moment someone asked you to do a pitch deck, right? So had
Hmm.
you done one before, or were you basically sort of figuring it out as you went? And what made you realize this is it, this is my thing, versus it just being another random project you were taking on?
Hmm. Well, I had done presentation design before. I've done a
Yeah.
few, like for an M&A company, they need things called Sims, and I did those. So that's presentation design. But I had never done a pitch deck until I want to say December of 2024. And that was the first time someone asked me to do a pitch deck. And for me, it was actually really it was another moment that things had clicked into place, because I realized I'm not just a designer. I'm not just a person that makes things look pretty. And to be honest, you can find a designer out there much cheaper than I am to do just design. And that's not what I want to offer the world. I offer people a combination of messaging and design, which is a whole, next level to it. I just had a meeting today, and they asked me, "Oh, would you be willing to do just design?" And I said, "No." And that was, a hard no for me, because something I realized, several months ago is my brain doesn't separate the two. For me, it's just communication.
Yeah.
And if you are looking for someone who will tell you, like, hey, on your pitch deck, this doesn't need to be here. You need to add this. We need to rearrange this. Let's bring in some clarity to the front slide. Like if you need someone to tell you that and you want a partner to walk through the messaging side of things, that's what I help people with. And the design is the other coin of that. Of how do you make it visually now appealing, and how do you tie it in together? So they're two sides of the same coin. So you need to communicate ultimately a message, and the words and the design are so integral and part of the process for me that like I can't separate them, and I don't want to separate them.
Yeah.
I think it works better when it's a combined effort. So so that was a big turning point for me, because I realized, wow, pitch decks are a really great combination of words and design. And it's so key that both of them are in sync with each other, because the stakes are monumental. I mean, you're asking for $1 million, $500,000, sometimes even more. And for that amount of money, your messaging has to be spot on. You have to be so clear with what you're asking. And ChatGPT can only take you so far.
Not very fun. Yeah.
And sometimes it can hurt your process, because then at some point you just get lost in a sea of messaging and you don't know what needs to be on the page. So you need someone to actually come in and edit, not add more.
Yeah, and there's a fundamental difference, and I don't think a lot of people sort of realize this, right? Between having a brilliant idea or even being a great at building things, but actually telling a story, right? Because that's really what a pitch is, and
Yeah.
it needs context, and you need to understand your audience. And I totally agree with you. I remember one investor once telling me that, I go through it on my phone, and if I don't get it in that like 5 scrolls, then I don't take the meeting.
Right.
So that's how important it is, and I don't think a lot of founders realize that. So I'm totally with you. And also I love working with designers who bring what I always say is strategic mind.
Yes.
Like will have input in terms of like, okay, it's disjointed here, or you're not sort of moving the ball forward here. So I totally buy that. And the other thing I love is saying no. You're absolutely right. There's always, and I get it. In the beginning, there's a little bit of fear. There's a lot of people who are starting out will tell me, I'll take anything that comes in the paycheck. And again, in the initial stages, it's okay, right? While you're trying to figure it out. But once you have, then you're right. Every yes becomes a no to something that may be more of a fit and a better project and a better opportunity for you. So I think that's a really great point to make.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. You got to work through the stages, but that is part of the solopreneur journey. And I think it's beautiful and it's fun, experiment. Don't take things so seriously. Just chill out.
Once you've woken up at night with panic attack, once you've gone through that phase, then yes, you'll get there. Because
Well, I still wake up. I still wake
okay.
up in the middle of the night all the time. Like that's part of the things I'm still working through, of like waking up at 2 a.m. I'm not stressing, but I'm like rehearsing conversations in my brain and stuff. But yeah,
I'm doing that too. But I think the difference is, I think Mandela said it best. The fear never goes away. You do it in spite of the fear, right?
Yes.
Whatever you're doing. That's the
Courage.
difference, I think. Yeah, exactly. Is you still do it scared, and you knowing that you'll figure it out. So
yes,
I think that it's important for people to know that. It's not like you're suddenly fearless and you can, like you said, you're not going to jump in front of a lion now and say, hey, come on, let's see what you got.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit to brand building and marketing, right? So when you started going to these startup networking events and talking to investors, when you were sort of doing your research, what surprised you most about what they were looking for? And was it different from what you'd expected? So you mentioned you'd go to startup events, you'd network, you'd talk to people, understand what their thinking was, what they were looking for.
Right. So one big difference between early stage startups and businesses that are later on is the early stage startups. It really matters who the founder is and how they specifically, not anyone else in the team, how they specifically can explain the idea. Because at that stage, when you're so early, the investor wants to know that the person running the company is capable and is passionate about what they're working on. And you can see this even I don't know if you're a big Shark Tank person, but I love that show. And that's like the biggest thing that they talk about is the founder and, the fact that they went door to door and they, talked to people and they, busted down every single door until they were in the right rooms to sell their product. They just want to know that you're determined and that you can make this happen. And if your messaging is scattered and all over the place and you're struggling to even explain the idea, then that does not bode well for them trusting you to take this forward and giving you how are they going to give you all their money and you can't even explain your idea clearly, which I get. Like, that is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
That's something that's extremely difficult to do, especially when it's your own messaging in your own company. I'm a messaging person and I struggled with mine so much. And finally, I feel like I got it to a place. I mean, it's a constant work in progress, right? But I, for myself, struggled to create this messaging. So I can only imagine for people who messaging is not something they want to mess with, to be able to explain it, it's a nightmare. So
Yeah.
I get it, but it doesn't make it any less necessary to be done so that when you encounter that investor, you can look put together and you know exactly what you're going to say. And the investor can get it instantly because, like you said, you have about 5 seconds to snag their attention.
Yeah, no, and I love that because again, you just showed sort of the value that you bring, right? Because even the stage matters in terms of when you're presenting, how you're presenting, who they, pay attention to, what they're paying attention to. So I think
Yeah.
all of those things, it's not just how pretty your slides look, which is what a
Right.
lot of people think,
Yeah.
is the most important thing. And you
No.
actually preempted my next question, which is now so I agree with you. I have this favorite phrase that I use, right? So you spend your days now clarifying complex stories for startup founders. But just like you said, like I always say, it's very hard to write the label from inside the bottle, right?
Yep.
So you're now shifting into outreach. So talk to me a little bit about are you finding it difficult to treat yourself as the product? And where do you find yourself getting stuck when you're telling your story?
That's a good question. I do, in a way. I mean, I had to figure it out because with outreach, specifically with LinkedIn, because that's mainly where I live and work, I really don't want to come across as salesy because that doesn't feel authentic to me. And whenever I don't feel authentic, I get awkward and it's exhausting to me. So there's a lot more ease and flow if I can just be myself and be helpful
Yeah.
rather than salesy. So that was just learning how to overcome that. And should I send a connection note or whatever, like all like the weird things that come with LinkedIn, I had to learn how to do. But no, I wouldn't say it was too difficult because I feel like I already did the hard work of figuring out who I'm speaking to and what they want and how to express that. So really it comes down to just like doing the thing. And sometimes that's also difficult because you have to be held accountable to actually accomplish that and send the connection request and all that. But one thing that I found that has been a lot more difficult than I even thought would be
Yeah.
is reading people's profiles. Who the heck are you? I don't know. I am at a loss for what you do when I'm reading your profiles, and each person that I'm it's like I'm decoding some ancient hieroglyphics, and there's like cryptic, like, this is, and the people are writing third person too, which makes it even more difficult. She is a leadership visionary who has accomplished a lot in her past. I'm like, great. That gives me zero information.
Yeah.
So that part has been hard, of like figuring out who people are and what they have to offer. They're just, it's so corporate-y, and so maybe they just like ran it through ChatGPT and added some buzzwords, but there's zero information about what they actually do. And so that's been a hard part that I've been trying to like decode what these people do.
Yeah, but and you've got yours down to a pat now, right? In terms of the profile. But yes, you said it's always evolving, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But but you're right though. It's one of my pet peeves too. And you're right because a lot of the clients I work with, one of the things we do is we overhaul their profile
Yeah.
exactly for that reason, right? Because the
Mhm.
thing is, what people don't understand is cleverness is actually very bad in communication
Oh yeah. It's
because
horrible.
less is more is the mantra I always tell people, right? It's like and my pet peeve is like when people say I'm a thought leader. I'm like, who thought so? It's like like other people should be saying that. You shouldn't be calling yourself a thought leader ever. So anyway,
Hmm.
that's a whole different ball game. But
Yeah.
yes, I agree. We should play profile bingo someday. So
Yes.
so you mentioned you niche down, right, into beautifully into pitch decks and landing pages. But I imagine a lot of founders, like the one you just mentioned a minute ago, still just see designer, right? So
Mhm.
how do you educate them that you aren't just making slides pretty, but you're actually doing strategic storytelling?
No, that's a great question. I actually had the same conversation earlier today with someone, and they asked me specifically, so can we use you just for visual design? And I said no, because what I provide is so much different than that. And um I said, if you need someone to help you get this across the finish line and get it done in a way that is that includes your messaging within part of your entire product here, the materials, then I'm the one for you. But if not, then I'm not a good fit for this project. So I had realized that this is such an integral part to my process that I just, we can't separate the two. So that's
Yeah.
like my biggest revelation.
Yeah, and also going back to your earlier point, I think one of the tricks of LinkedIn to not be salesy is also you've got to, and this is a lesson from me, is you've got to actually show people what you do rather than tell them what you do, right?
Yeah.
So how do you demonstrate value without ever selling a service? And that's
Mm.
a really difficult thing to do, I think.
Hmm.
And it takes time and it takes building muscle. Both of us do communication and understand brands and strategy, and still it's hard, right?
Hmm.
So even with my
Yeah.
own positioning, it's taken a while to evolve. But again,
Yeah.
like you said, it's, I've put stuff out there, learned from every project how to make it better and sharper and to find the right person.
Yeah. And part of that is finding ways to show, not tell.
Yeah.
And one way I found that is helpful for this is to use testimonials instead of just explaining what you do. And the way that this came about is I was literally writing copy for myself about a consultation offer where I sit down with someone, walk through their messaging, give them feedback, whatever. At that same moment, as I was writing that copy, talking about how great I am and how great my consultations are, I got a message from a person that I had a consultation with last week. And they just beautifully laid out everything that was so great about the consultation. And they thanked me for it, just unprompted. They just sent me this message. And I took a look at my copy and I threw it out. And instead, I put that testimony there. And I'm like, this shows rather than tells the value that I can bring about how I can, snap focus into someone's business, how I can, clear the clutter away and just have them commit to one single storyline instead of being so scatterbrained. And that's, what he mentioned in his testimonial. I'm like, this is so much better than me trying to figure out a way that I can talk about how cool I am and how cool my consultations are. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but that definitely is one that I've seen work much better.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Those are gold. I always tell,
Mhm.
and I'm still amazed at the number of people I work with who don't get testimonials. I mean, even
Mhm.
ask for them after, not a consultation, but after a project is completed, right? And
Mhm.
like you said, there's no better proof of your value than the person you delivered it to saying what they got out of it. So
Yeah.
I totally agree. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so you offer pitch decks, scripts, and landing pages. So
Mhm.
when a founder comes to you, do they usually know which one they need, or are you sort of having to uncover the problem first?
Mhm.
And go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the times they will come to me for a pitch deck, and that's like the front door offer that, oh, I need a pitch deck. Let me go to this person and get a pitch deck. But as soon as we sit down, we really uncover everything else they need. There's usually a whole system that needs updating. So if you update your pitch deck, you probably also need to update your homepage, right?
Yeah.
But then you probably also need to update your one pager. Oh, and then you also need to update any materials you take with you to conferences, and then you probably need multiple variations of the pitch deck. So it's kind of like I start with the pitch decks, and that's a really good entry point. And that's another reason why I chose pitch decks, because I mean, I could choose really anything that has words and visuals on it on the page. That's a static design. Anything in Canva, really. But I chose pitch decks that's because people struggle a lot with those, and that's usually something that they want to outsource, and they think and they take that mental step of, oh, let me hire someone for this. So that's another, I guess, tip on how to choose a niche, is to figure out what do people think in their heads that they need.
Yeah.
That's and it's funny because for coaches, this is really difficult. Have you ever heard anyone say, I need mindset coaching because my mindset sucks? It's
Yeah.
not common. People don't want to admit that. So, but what they do need, I need to, improve my pipeline. And so I'm going to go to someone who does coaching on how to improve pipeline. When really, if the coach is smart, they're also coaching on mindset, and you're buying that because that's what you really need. But people don't want to admit to that. So that's another, like, I guess, trick of messaging of, you have to make sure what you're providing is something that people actually will want to buy and want to pursue.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also in consumer speak, right? One of the things I always work on is mirroring the language that clients use, right? Because nobody sits around saying, hey, I need a transformation. I think I'm going to go find a coach who can transform me next month, right? I mean, you're right. You got to tie it down to real problems and tangible things that people think about, not marketing language, right? Which
exactly.
I think a lot of people get lost in. So yeah, there's absolutely value in that. And I'm just curious, do you have two different versions? I always had like the one I presented, the one I left behind for a picture, right?
Yes, it's so key, and most people don't do that. But that's something that I offer in my pitch decks, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone present with a deck that I'm like, there are so many words.
I know. Like, what are you going to stand in the room and say if they're the words on the slide? What's the point?
Way too many words. And that's the danger of it, is people want to say everything, and so they cram it all onto the deck and in the words. And so then you're standing on stage presenting your deck, even if you're not reading it, people in the audience are reading while you're talking. That's not a good way to engage the mind and get people in that, that flow state when you're listening to a really good speaker and they got you on the hook and you're in the flow, versus if they're trying to read and listen to you, you're constantly switching their flow back and forth and they can't get in that zone with you. So that's absolutely spot on. You have to have two different versions of your decks. You have to have one that has a lot less words. Also, maybe even play around with the idea of having blank slides in between certain sections. So you can click to the blank slide and say, all the attention is on you, and you can continue speaking, maybe say a story, something key, something emotional, pivotal. Whenever there's a key moment like that, that's a good spot for a blank slide. Experiment with it. Okay. The key thing that you have to remember is that you have to become a performer of your slides and not a presenter, because that reframe is everything. When you are standing on stage and you're just like clicking through slides and explaining them, versus engaging someone through a story and getting them fully on board and making them just enthralled with your idea. That's my goal when I work with people, is to get people so excited that they just can't help but want to jump in and join and invest and be a part of your idea. Not just, oh, okay, I understand the idea, but I can't wait to join.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brilliant advice. And I agree with you. It's like, I always tell people, you're telling a story. There should be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you should keep the ball moving too, right? Don't go over the same stuff. And I'll often have just a picture or a word on a slide when I'm presenting. Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to be reading the slide. I want them to be listening to me. So absolutely very good tips, I think, for anyone listening in terms of, writing a pitch or doing any kind of presentation.
Yeah, presentation and performing and practice. Please practice.
Absolutely.
It's so important. People don't practice their pitches. And I'm like, how? Why? That's like 90% of the experience.
Yeah, I do it until I can go through my slides with my eyes closed. So I even
Yeah.
know that's how I practice. But yes, I agree with
Hmm.
you. So now the other thing you mentioned was something I think every solopreneur needs to hear, right? You told
Hmm.
me I'm in marketing, but sales is a completely different beast. Now,
Hmm.
I think a lot of us assume that because we're experts at doing the work, we'll naturally be experts at selling it, right? So
Yeah.
when did you first realize that gap existed? And what was the hardest part of sort of taming the sales beast, if you like?
I think I've grown up always a little bit delusional.
That's a good thing.
It has been a good thing, but also I do have like because of that, I've had moments of like reality crashing down on me. One of the things I was delusional about is sales. I thought because I was good at marketing that I would also be good at sales. But like you said, it's a completely different beast. And I think my crashing moment with that was one of my first sales calls where I had someone on the call and it was the most awkward, uncomfortable conversation I've ever had. I wish I could find, I need to look for that and maybe like cringe at it again. But it was so difficult because first of all, I didn't really know what I was selling at that point. But also, one thing that was so big, and I think Chris Doe and a couple others helped me realize this, is I really needed to stop selling and start listening. That was my big revelation is I literally like almost didn't hear them. I was like, So anyways, here's what I want to sell you. Oh, it cracked me up because I'm like, that's not the way that you get trust with people. And also that's also not integral, that integrity wise, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to just sell someone something. I want to first hear them out, listen to what they need. Maybe they don't even need what I'm selling.
Yeah.
But the first step is to listen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a revelation for me too, right? Because I mean, they call it sales, but it's
Mhm.
everything but that word, right? Because it literally is. You should never sell on a sales call. And now when I tell people that, they look at me cross-eyed, like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And you're right. I think it's more sort of understanding, creating space for someone to share their problem, and then playing it back to them
Mhm.
to say that here, this is what I heard, right?
Yes.
Before you even get to like, here's how I can help you. And yeah, you're right. Never sell. Um, which maybe we can do a separate podcast on that someday
I love
for
that. Yeah.
solopreneurs. Now, you said that investors need to understand a slide in about 3 seconds or 5 seconds, right? Or you've lost them. Now,
Mhm.
I know technical founders love to bury us in like jargon and data, right? Or
Yeah.
data, as they say. What is your specific framework or trick for stripping the complexity away? Or how do you convince a founder to kill their darlings?
Um, mm, that's a good question. So what I usually start with, if you have, well, most of the time when the founders come to me, they're overwhelmed and stressed because they don't know what to put on the page. And for them, it's a relief. It's a feeling of, oh, I don't have to put all that on there. Oh, great. And so I haven't encountered the, oh no, I want that on there as much as I thought I would.
Yeah,
Interesting enough, I thought you would think that people would be like, no, I need it on there. And sometimes, you do come across that, and then I find a way to compromise and find a better way to say it or whatever. But most of the time, it's interesting. Like they just feel so relieved that they don't have to say all that, and for them, it's a like a release of, oh, thank goodness, just please just do it for me, and I'll say what you want me to say, and I don't have to think about this anymore. They just want to be given words to say and not have this stress of figuring this out, this puzzle, because they have enough to worry about. They're
yeah,
building a business, they're talking to investors, they just need the tools to succeed with their messaging. They don't want to sit down and cram everything. That's stressful for them. I feel for that. Like, they don't
yeah,
want to be spending time doing that. So if I can help them just take a breath, you don't need all that on there, just say these key things and get them to the next phase of curiosity. When you first talk to someone, the first thing you need to do is get them curious. Just spark that curiosity. You don't need to explain everything every single detail about your business. You just need to get them curious enough to turn the page. And as soon as they're there, then you get them enough information to understand your idea. And then comes like the ask and figuring all that out. So everything in messaging comes in stages, and you could be saying the right thing, but you might be saying it at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another challenge when it comes to messaging, and something that I help people through as well.
Yeah, and absolutely, great point. And let the witness lead you, right? That's what I always tell people in messaging. You can always go deeper, but don't start deep, because then you'll bury someone in stuff they may not need or may not, even want at that point in time.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and that's why they call it the journey, I guess. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing I think you should add to your profile now, or your list of skills, is therapist. There's clearly some therapy there that's
Oh, no.
happening with lightening
Yeah.
the load of the founder.
Yeah.
There's definitely something there. So I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it definitely, we're human, right? And that's part of the experience of business, is how do we handle our insecurities and emotions and all of that comes with being human, and how do we still have a business throughout all that. So I definitely help people through some challenging moments of mindset and thought work, which I only know that because of everything I've had to go through myself and am going through. I think especially specifically within the last couple of months, I feel like I've grown a lot as far as mindset and understanding where my insecurities come from and anxieties. Like, I've dealt with anxiety. I think most people deal with anxiety. And it's interesting to kind of press into that discomfort and figure out where it's coming from, because only when you understand that is when you can really make progress on it. And one example of that is I realized that whenever I'm on a sales call and I get uncomfortable, it's because I'm not being authentic to who I am. And I'm trying to either grovel for their attachment and grovel for their everyone wants to be part of a tribe, right? So if you're trying to oh, please like me, or you try not to hurt their feelings or whatever, then it becomes very inauthentic and it feels forceful rather than ease and flow. So that's something that I've been learning recently, is how can I be as authentic as I can, because that's energizing. That's fun. But if you are inauthentic, then that is draining. So paying attention to how your body feels in moments like that is also key, because oftentimes you will have tells and your body is telling you something and you just need to listen.
Yeah, and it's true. And also on the other side of this fence, right? People can smell that from a mile away, right?
Yes,
Desperation,
absolutely.
fear, lack of confidence, or even inauthenticity, as you said,
Yep.
right? But it's still very hard to just be yourself, right? And it's like everything else. It's like, it's a muscle you have to build. And I'm learning to build it too. I never did sales before I became a solopreneur. And it just takes time, it takes practice, and you will screw up a lot, and that's okay, because that's part of the learning process and getting comfortable with yourself. So
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's born a natural, I don't think anyone comes out a natural salesperson.
no,
Yeah.
that would
No.
be scary.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a skill you can learn, and there is art and science to it. That's the other part of it, which I now appreciate much more than I ever did when I worked at large agencies and did the first part.
Yeah. It's
So
very, very true.
if a founder was watching just now, right, you have this pitch script too. So he knows exactly what he wants to say. He's got the perfect pitch deck. What's one mistake you see founders make over and over when they're pitching, and what's like a fix for it, if you have one?
I think the main thing is cramming too much information onto each slide. So if you think of it this way, each slide should only have one idea you're trying to communicate. And you can even do this. Like, I've encouraged people to do this exercise where you take each slide, you can print it out, whatever you want, literally write what you want people to get from that slide. And it has to be just one thing, one thing from that slide. And you have to make sure that every visual, every icon, every piece of text on that slide is supporting just that one main idea. And that will keep you so much more focused than having everything on that slide. So that's something that I encourage people to do. And that's especially hard to do on the problem slide.
Yeah.
Every single founder I've talked to, they try to cram like 4 or 5 problems that they're solving. You have to choose one. And I know that's very difficult, but a founder or an investor is not going to remember 5 problems. They're going to remember the one that you solve. So you better be intentional about what that problem is. So choose one, commit to it, and the rest of the deck will be so much easier if you can commit to solving just one problem.
Yeah, and also don't be scared of finding the right investor, right? Because you're not always going to find the right person, because it's like, that's the other thing I think a lot of founders fear. And I worked with a lot of startups before this in another iteration of my life, and people would like you're right, there's a kitchen sink mentality. It's like, oh, if I bring 4 or 5 things, then one of them might get interested in one of those things. And the opposite is true, right? Because focus is really important. And also when you're starting out, it's much more important to solve one problem, do it better than anyone else, and then go move to problem 2, 2.5,
Absolutely.
3.
Yep.
So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
So now, as a solopreneur, you're doing everything, right? Sales, delivery, admin. So what's one thing you've learned to protect or prioritize that keeps you from burning out?
Oh, that's a good question. What I've learned is that I can't handle more than 3 meetings a day. Physically, I burn out after 3. And it's something that I tried. Actually, I did something called Pitch-a-Palooza, which is something that I was practicing my pitch. And so I was feeling really motivated. I was like, I'm going to get so good at this because I want to provide the best value to my clients. So I'm going to put myself through the test, through the ringer, and set myself a bunch of pitches in a day so I can practice. And the unexpected benefit of that was me realizing I don't want to do this ever again. So that's when I realized at 3, I'm done. So that's something that I can put a hard no on, because even if it's an important call, I want to move it to a different day where I have the brain space to actually invest and give my best to this call, because otherwise I'm doing a disservice to whoever I'm meeting with.
Yeah, I know. I love that. And you're right. And that is the one thing we actually have full control over as solopreneurs, right? Is our time and our calendar.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I block stuff in my day just to do work or like thinking blocks. So there's not, that was one thing that used to drive me crazy in the corporate world, is like people can go and book on your calendar. I was like, no. So yeah, I agree. And I love that.
And I'm okay, to be fair, I'm still okay, I had 3 meetings yesterday, so I'm not the best at this yet. But what I have been moving towards is really being strict about not having meetings on Mondays and Fridays. So this week was a little bit of an anomaly because I was in Cancun last week, so things were different. But generally, I like to keep Mondays and Fridays blocked off for deep work.
Yeah.
Because I hate having just if I have one meeting throughout the day, my whole day becomes sort of revolved around that meeting. And now it's like, oh, I have to, schedule this around that. And it's also mentally very difficult to be working on something and then switch into meeting mode and then switch back for me. And I don't know, maybe that's an ADHD tendency, human tendency, whatever it is, it makes it very difficult. So that's another thing, is I like to batch my meetings. If I can do, I'd rather have 3 in one day than 3 interspersed throughout the week. But keeping my Mondays and Fridays blocked off at least gives me some surety that I have deep work time.
Yeah, no, that's a great advice. I do the same thing. Fridays, I don't do any client meetings, and Mondays. But and the other thing I do is I'm similar. Like if I have a discovery call or a sales call, then I won't do more than 1 in a day, because I just need the time and space to think about someone else's problem, right? And you can't keep switching gears, doing your work, someone else's work. So I totally agree with you. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
So tell me, if we were to grab coffee 3 years from now, where would you want to be? What's different?
Mm,
What have you built?
3 years from now.
Yeah.
So the vision is I'm working no more than 6 hours a day, preferably Fridays off would be great. I'm doing what I love. I'm not doing things that give me resentment. I've done a lot of projects in the past where I'm like, I know I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it anyway because I feel like I need to. And so I only want to do the projects that I absolutely love. I want to do less projects at a higher rate and a deeper work than rather than being just like bulk, that would give me a lot of peace and I would love that. As far as what I'd be working on, I feel like I'm still going to be in the startup world. But then again, you never know. You never know what life will bring you. So I'm curious and I'm still open to like investigating different avenues, but I really love the startup world, so that's probably where I'll stick around for a while at least. And I want to get more into content. I want to make video content, which is something I haven't really dipped my toes into for LinkedIn yet. So I want to do more of that. And um, I want to be a lot closer to discovering my zone of genius, which I don't know if you've read the book The Big Leap.
I haven't, but somebody told me about it recently. Yeah.
It's one of those books you always hear about, but I've found that not many people have actually read it, like that I've talked to at least recently. But that book is all about finding your zone of genius and not staying in your zone of competence or excellence.
Yeah.
And so I want to figure out what Versaviya can do to really make the biggest impact on the world and for it to be the most fulfilling for me. So I'm still discovering that, still looking for that. But that's the vision.
Yeah, no, I love that. My guest this week actually talked about that, of staying in your zone of genius and stripping
Mm-hmm.
away all the other stuff,
Absolutely.
as much as you
Yeah.
can. So that's a great goal to have, a vision to have. And I love that you
Mm-hmm.
started with the personal boundaries too, which is really important.
Yeah.
So if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, Versaviya, what would you tell them?
I'd say you have to be ready to look a fool to be a master. And also just try. I found that when you need to do something, you'll find a way to do it. And sometimes you got to put a little fire under your booty to get something done. If it's like, oh yeah, we really, really would like to do that at some point, you're never going to do it. And you're never going to be ready.
No.
And that's the point. You have to do it anyway. You're not going to be ready. No one is ready until you've done it at least once, and you obviously haven't done this before. So just be ready to be a fool, be ready to not be ready.
Yeah.
And just do it.
Yeah, there's no perfect timing, right? I always say leap and the net will appear. It won't until then. So
Yes, exactly.
is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered?
I'm always open to, like, I want to offer a listening ear, helping hand, whatever people need. Like, I know for me, it was so difficult and I felt really alone when I first started my business. So I'm always down to help. If people want to slide into my LinkedIn DMs, happy to help or provide some advice on their pitch deck, anything they're putting together. That's something that I just want to offer and put out there because I know that would have helped me a lot when I was first starting out.
Well, that's great. And we'll add that in the contacts from the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to our rapid fire round.
Oh, man.
You ready? All
Mm-hmm.
right. What's one buzzword in startup pitch decks that makes you want to scream?
Synergy.
Okay, I'm with you on that one. If you could design a pitch deck for any historical figure, who would it be?
SpongeBob.
Never thought of him as a historical figure, but yeah,
He's
absolutely.
amazing.
He's been around too. Yeah,
I've been around.
I can't say since my childhood, but definitely since my early adulthood. So, karaoke song that best represents your solopreneur journey?
Don't Stop Believing.
Oh, good one. What's one thing your mom taught you that directly applies to entrepreneurship?
Get your booty in gear.
I have to meet her. 3-word tagline for your business. Go.
Cut, cut, cut.
I hope founders listening will pay attention to that. Well, that was a really fun way to end the show. I'm not going to say cut, but thank you so much, Versaviya. It was so much fun chatting with you. And thank you for sharing your stories and your wisdom today.
My pleasure.
Talking with Versaviya reminded me that the best business lessons don't come from theory. They come from the messy, uncomfortable work of actually trying things. So here are 4 takeaways from her journey that I think every solopreneur needs to hear. Here's the first lesson. You don't have to niche down when you start. I loved how Versaviya was so honest about the messy middle, when she literally went door to door with flyers, not even knowing what she was offering or who needed it. And that failed experiment, that was actually the beginning of her figuring it out. This is something I see all the time with solopreneurs I work with. This rush to have everything figured out before you start. But here's the truth. Contrary to what most people say about niching down, you don't have to have your perfect niche or your polished positioning on day one. What you need is to start applying your skills and paying attention to the signals you're getting back from the market. Try different things, offer different services, work with different types of clients, because the only way to figure out what your unique value is, where you actually shine, is to try things and see what sticks. Niche down only after you've done that experimentation. Otherwise, you're just guessing. Second, stop trying to explain everything. Spark curiosity in stages. Versaviya talked about how founders cram too much information onto each slide, and especially on the problem slide, where they try to squeeze in 4 or 5 problems at once. It's that kitchen sink mentality that comes from fear. Maybe if I list 5 things, something will land. But as Versaviya put it, an investor won't remember 5 things. They'll remember the one thing you actually solved. Here's the lesson to steal and apply in all your communication. Your homepage, your LinkedIn profile, your sales conversations, everywhere you're trying to communicate your value. Your job up front is not to dump the full encyclopedia. It's to earn the next minute. Get them curious enough to keep reading, turn the page, take the next step, or ask the next question. And the easiest discipline tool is what Versaviya calls the 1 idea rule. 1 slide, 1 idea. 1 conversation, 1 idea. 1 section of your site, 1 idea. You can always go deeper, but let the other person's curiosity guide you there. Don't bury them before they've even decided they're interested. Third, show, don't tell. I love the moment where Versaviya was literally writing copy about how great her consultations are, and right then she got an unprompted message from someone she just had a call with. They laid out everything that was valuable about the session in their own words. So what did she do? She threw out her copy and used their words instead, because it proved the value she brings without the awkward self-congratulations. Here's the simple way to apply that. Go find one client message, an email, a DM, a text, where they describe the result in plain language. Then build your headline, your call to action, your LinkedIn about around those words, not yours. Because the best version of your value proposition is usually coming from the person who experienced it, not the person trying to describe it. And finally, sales isn't about selling, it's about listening. Versaviya thought because she was good at marketing, she'd be good at sales. But then she had the first awkward sales call where she realized she was talking at people instead of listening to them. And that shift from selling to listening, that's where trust gets built. That's where you stop feeling salesy and start feeling like yourself. Because when you're actually listening, you can tell someone, you know what? I'm not the right fit for this. And that authenticity, that's what people remember. Now, this is perhaps the most critical lesson if you want to succeed as a solopreneur. So on your next discovery call, try to spend 80% of the time listening. Don't rehearse your pitch in your head while they're talking. Instead, play back exactly what you heard to make sure they feel understood. If you realize you can't solve their problem, tell them. You'll be amazed at how much authority you build by being the person who didn't try to sell them something they didn't need. So here's my challenge to you this week. If you're just starting out, commit to experimenting. Say yes to things that stretch you, but Keep track of what energizes you versus what drains you. And if you're further along in your journey, ask yourself, am I still trying to be everything to everyone? Or have I gotten clear enough on my value that I can say no to clients who aren't the right fit? Because at the end of the day, clarity isn't just about making your message simpler for your clients, it's about making your business simpler for you. And that's when everything starts to flow. Thank you for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If this episode hit a nerve and you're realizing your message is still a little scattered, or you're struggling to package what you do so people instantly get it, I've got something for you. I'm offering up a limited number of free brand clarity sessions where we'll pinpoint what's missing and define your next move. Grab the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind. And remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.